Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today, my guest is Laura Valvasori, and our topic is choosing an alcohol-free life. Laura is a business and well-being mentor, and she is a certified emotional code practitioner, and she has a program called Still Me But Alcohol Free. Laura shares her personal journey of when she was drinking alcohol in her mid 40s. It was part of her daily culture because she was in that boating culture and it was socially acceptable. And it just wasn't sitting well with her. She was starting to have gut health issues and she was noticing the impact alcohol was having on her life. She decided to stop using alcohol and after a short time noticed the impact it was having on her body and noticed that when she released it from her body that she was having a positive impact on her mental state, her emotional state, and her overall well-being. She now works with women, teaching them how to be in social situations without drinking alcohol and challenging them to take alcohol out of their life for 30 days and just notice the impact, just see how it feels. So for you, it might not be giving up alcohol forever. It might be going back into moderation. But really, this podcast is about taking it out of our body for a certain amount of time just to see the impact, just to notice how that feels for us. So I challenge you to take this on yourself, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. And if you do, please take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Laura. Good morning, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Good morning. It's nice to see you on camera.
It's good to see you. I'm excited about our topic today, and I realize that it's probably a little bit controversial for people, although I think it's becoming more normalized. And so today we're going to talk about living an alcohol-free lifestyle. And when I was learning about you, you're a business and well-being mentor, an author, an energy practitioner that does Reiki, and you have this alcohol-free lifestyle program. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and your path and how you got to where you are today with this program that you're launching.
Sure, absolutely. So, my career background is that I spent the beginning part of my career in marketing roles for professional service firms. So, I worked for law firms and accounting firms for a number of years, and then made the decision to go out on my own and started a consulting business. So, I focused on marketing strategy and I developed a niche in working with manufacturing and construction businesses. And from that experience, I wrote a book that is called Good to Grow: Cultivate the Mindset and Habits to Thrive as an Entrepreneur. And that happened sort of as we were coming off the back of the pandemic and people were not wanting to go back into the corporate world and were asking me a lot of questions. So I shared a lot of the insights about what I needed to do internally to make the shift to go from being an employee to an entrepreneur. And then after I released that book, unfortunately, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And that led me into exploring a lot of energy work to support my dad and myself and a lot of people around me. And
Mm-hmm.
after my dad passed in July, I sort of took the time after to grieve for the summer and still am grieving. And when I sort of came back into the world, a lot of people were asking me about going alcohol free. And it felt like the right thing to do at that time to focus something on something that was more to do with well-being. And there was a lot of interest. So I created this program to share all of the things that I learned when I went alcohol free.
Mm-hmm.
So to backtrack, my alcohol-free journey began in 2020. So it's been 4 years now. And it was a result of starting to get more connected to my intuition and feeling like alcohol was not agreeing with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently 49, but at that time I was 45.
Yeah.
And I was starting to experience some perimenopausal kind of symptoms, I thought they were. And I was having a lot of heartburn and indigestion, and I just wasn't feeling great. And I was doing a lot of things to support my well-being, like exercising and taking supplements. So I just doubled down on those things
Mm-hmm.
instead of doing what I was intuitively feeling was to remove wine. And I did not have a drinking problem. I was drinking, like many people would say, socially. We have an active social life. And it was just starting to not sit well with me. So
Yeah.
I made the decision to go alcohol free for a while and see if it made a difference. And it was such a dramatic difference for me that I just continued to be that way and continued and continued. And that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's sort of the story of my background and my sort of winding path of where I've gotten to where I am
Yeah.
today.
I mean, it's interesting that that happened to you in your early 40s because I think as well for me, when I was in my early 40s, I started to realize that alcohol was affecting me differently than when I was younger,
Yeah.
and especially disrupting my sleep. And I was just
Mhm.
burning up. I have to have a little bit of wine at dinner. I'd go to out and meet a friend and have a glass of wine, and I'd be boiling in my bed, and my sleep would be so disrupted. And I started realizing that I couldn't process alcohol like I used
Yeah,
to,
and it
and
was
it
so
was yeah,
frustrating because I'm like,
yeah,
"Wait a second, I've
yeah.
enjoyed drinking Sauvignon Blanc for years, and it's not been a problem, and suddenly I'm having this heartburn, and I'm popping antacids every night, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, why do I feel differently?" And, it's a big thing to admit that because you don't want to admit that that's the issue because then that means you have to do something about it, so
Yeah. Yeah. And so you started working with women in midlife that are wanting to give up alcohol. And
Mhm.
so tell me a little bit about your background. I know you were like in the
Sure.
boating community and drinking was a part of socialization. And so it's very embedded into that culture. And so let's talk a little bit about that background.
Yeah, so like I said, we have an active social life. We are boaters and we have been for the past 13 years. And boating and alcohol are very connected. A lot of people sit around and have drinks and you're out on the water and it's just what you do. So when I was starting to recognize that it was no longer matching me or working for me, it was a real internal challenge, me thinking about how I'm going to continue to have this lifestyle and connect with people and still have fun and do all these things if I'm not drinking. And it
Hmm.
really held me back from making the decision that I knew I needed to make. And eventually it got to a point we had done a 3-week vacation. We were kind of on that tail end of coming off of COVID and lockdowns and all the things. And we had an opportunity to do this really cool trip for 3 weeks. So we went with 3 other boats. We had this amazing vacation, saw all this beautiful stuff, and I drank every day because I was on vacation.
Hmm.
And I wasn't drunk throughout this. I was just drinking, like you'd have Caesar in the morning, you'd have a cocktail in the afternoon, you have some wine for dinner. So it was like you know, a bit every day and you're consistently drinking. And by the end of that, it was like the breaking point moment for me that I felt like something needed to change.
Hmm.
And that was really the impetus for me to
Hmm.
make a shift.
What were you
And
feeling though?
I was just feeling like this isn't who I want to be. Like, I don't want to feel bad and I don't want to be unhealthy and I don't want to be. And I think I started to internally recognize I was like betraying myself. So
Mm.
I'm putting other people's
Yeah.
feelings ahead of my own and being concerned about what other people are going to think if I'm not drinking or how I'm going to connect or how it's going to reflect versus what I knew to be true for myself.
Yeah.
And it was just like this internal dissonance that was building. So there was like the physical symptoms, and then there was this betrayal of self happening and sort
Hmm.
of a misalignment of I'm in midlife, I'm trying to do all the things to be healthy, yet I'm doing this thing that I know
Yes.
cognitively is not healthy. And it's almost like canceling out the healthy things that I'm doing. So it just got to this point of like, why am I in this place and getting really frustrated with myself, which is what became the fuel to make the decision.
Yeah. And I understand that because there's this thought and this logic around I need to drink to be able to relate to them. Like they're going to think I'm not fun. They're going to think I'm boring.
Yeah,
Or there's the other side too, where you're sober and they're not. And then you're seeing all the dysfunction. And that's like a whole nother angle.
that can be tricky. Yeah. It is something that you learn to manage, and it's something that it's a reality. So at the beginning of the night, like everyone's having their first couple of drinks, and if they're getting giggly or something, you're like, oh, I'm not experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the night, sometimes when people are getting sloppier or repeating themselves or laughing at things that aren't so funny anymore, it can get irritating,
Yeah.
truthfully. So there's definitely needing to manage through some of those social situations.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was talking to another lady recently, who doesn't drink at all, and she will go to these social events, and then there's that part of the evening where she just kind of like ducks out because there's a lot of dysfunction around, and she doesn't want to be a part of it. So she wants to be at these events, and she feels fine going to them, but then at the end of the night, it's
Yep.
like not okay anymore for her.
There's a saying I learned, an Irish goodbye or a French exit. It means just sort of quietly slipping out.
Yes.
So I often will do that. So if I'm getting to the point in the evening where everyone's had a lot of drinks and it's starting to not be fun for me anymore, I'll be like, okay, I'm good. I'll just sort of I'll head to bed a bit earlier, and
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. And at first I thought, oh, it's drawing attention to me. But the truth is people don't care as
They
much
don't
as you think
notice.
they care in your head. Yeah. And they're drinking and still having a good time. I'm just like, I'm okay. It's more, you have to be okay with it yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I've had a great night and I've enjoyed myself. And I have been drinking non-alcoholic beverages for a while, and I am done putting liquid in my body. That's the
Hmm.
difference. Alcohol
Yeah.
is a diuretic, and it's also creates cravings because it's an addictive substance. So you'll notice that you can drink like a whole bottle of wine easily, but if
Yeah.
I get to the end of drinking a bottle of non-alcoholic wine throughout the evening,
Hmm.
I'm full, like I'm hydrated. It
Yeah.
doesn't
How
have that
funny.
dehydrating effect. So you kind of
Hmm.
get to the point where you're like, I've had all the things I want to drink. Even if
Yeah.
you're drinking water at that point, I don't want to drink anymore. And then you can choose to call it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's a neighbor on our street, and she's she's really sweet, but she seems to be a little bit reclusive. And it's with that first drink that she has that all of a sudden she comes out of her shell and she's the life of the party and she's active and she's engaged.
Right.
And I've noticed this pattern with her, and I always think it's really interesting. She needs that one glass to take the edge off, and then she is completely able to be socially competent in a way.
Mhm.
So I think that that can be a crutch for a lot of people too, going into these social events when they might be introverted or they might not be as social and needing that alcohol as a crutch to kind of fit in.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely people that will use it as a crutch, and it does lower the activity in the part of your brain that causes the anxiety of being in that social situation initially, but then it actually will cause more anxiety over time. So that's one
Yeah.
piece of the puzzle. The other is when you stop drinking, it gives you an opportunity to examine a lot of the behaviors that you have had.
Hmm.
So why is it that you don't feel comfortable in those situations? And
Yeah.
is there anything else you can be doing? It's kind of like unpacking a lot of your stuff that you've been avoiding. When you take the alcohol out, it causes you to confront some of those things. And, it's a real self development kind of opportunity as well.
Yeah. And the opposite, I think, might be true is that there is this use of alcohol to avoid this self reflection component.
Yes,
So it's like, which path are we going to choose?
100%. It's, people use alcohol for pleasure or to celebrate and in those social situations, and then they use it as an avoidance um, tool, I guess, if you'll say. Like they'll use it to avoid uncomfortable feelings or um, things that they don't want to experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious because I know your experience has been different, but I'm assuming that if you're in this drinking culture, say you're drinking and you're going to concerts, or like that's the culture that you're embedded in deeply with your
Mhm.
friends and your community, that it will make other people uncomfortable when you're not drinking for not for different reasons. Like makes almost like it makes them look at their pattern and feel as if you're judging, even if you're not. And so I'm curious what your experience was with that, and then also how other people have experienced it, because I think yours is a little bit unique in that way.
So, one of the most popular responses I get when I tell people that I'm alcohol free is that
Hmm.
people start telling me how little they drink.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's because it's people start reflecting on themselves. So I'm not judging anyone, I'm not saying anything, but it's a natural way that a mirror gets turned on yourself. And I also think that we often think that we're being judged by other people or they're having thoughts about us that they aren't really thinking about us that much.
Yeah, right.
Like
Yeah.
we make it more of a hype in our head of how they're going to react and what it's going to be. But my experience is that people are generally supportive. There have been people that are put their nose up, or they'll be like, oh yeah, she's not as fun or whatever. But I don't think I've had that many reactions of that nature because I've made a conscious decision to still enjoy myself in social situations. I
Yeah.
have gone into those situations not feeling like I'm missing out on something or I'm deprived because I'm not drinking. I'm going in with the full expectation that I'm still going to have a good time just without alcohol.
Hmm. And so, what would be the benefit of completely going alcohol free versus going in moderation, having maybe 1 to 2 drinks a week?
So there are pros and cons to both. And in my experience in the past, I've done like dry Januaries and that type of thing when I've wanted to have a break or like a reset. But I always treated it like a period of time
Hmm.
to have a break and then was looking forward to the glass of wine right at the end.
Hmm.
So that was an experience of going alcohol free for a period with a specific intended time.
Hmm.
Um, I have actually found being alcohol free easier over time now that I've done it in a longer term for a few reasons. The first is that you only have to make the decision once. Like, I have decided to be alcohol free. I
Hmm.
don't
Hmm.
have to decide over and over and over when I'm
Yeah.
going to have a drink.
Good point. Yeah.
Because if you decide, for example, I'm going to have one drink a week, or I'm only going to drink on special occasions, which I've
Hmm.
done that in the past when we've tried to moderate, there becomes a lot of special occasions. Like, it's your girlfriend's
Yeah.
birthday, and then it's this, and then it's that. And next thing you know, you are back to where you started.
Hmm.
The other thing to consider is that once you have a drink and you put alcohol into your system,
Yeah.
it is an addictive substance that makes you want to drink more.
Hmm.
So that's why it's so difficult when you decide to have one drink and you're saying, I'm just going to have one glass of wine when you go out. And then someone offers you a top up and you go, well, I'll just have a little more. And well, now I've had two. I only said I was going to have one. I might as well have a third. It's
Yeah.
very easy to go down this slippery slope, partly because of a physiological thing and partly because of a mental thing. Like, I've already messed up, if you will. So I might
Yeah.
as well. So over time, I have just found it way easier. The mental chatter that
Hmm.
is gone is so freeing to not think about, okay, am I going to have a drink on Friday night or I'm going to wait till Saturday night? Because I said I was only going to have one drink on the weekend. And when am I going to time that drink? And then if you don't do what you said you do, the mental chatter of beating yourself up the next day for not being true to what you said, it's just way easier to just take it out of the equation.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, tell me about your husband and your relationship with alcohol and him, and that path of you kind of moving away from alcohol.
Yeah. So one of my concerns when I was deciding was how it was going to affect our relationship
Hmm.
because we have both enjoyed wine as an experience. So going out for dinner and ordering a bottle of wine. We've taken vacations where we've gone to wineries. At the end of the day, we'll have a drink together. And that's sort of our decompressing and catch up type of time. And I was really concerned about how all those things were going to change. And what I've realized is that in a lot of the cases, what I was looking for was a sense of connection versus
Yeah.
it mattering what's in our glass. So my husband still drinks. He does something that they refer to as zebra striping now. He'll drink a mix of non-alcoholic drinks and alcoholic drinks. So he's definitely reduced his overall consumption,
Hmm.
but he doesn't like non-alcoholic wine. So he will still drink regular wine.
Hmm.
And then he mostly drinks non-alcoholic beer now because he enjoys it just as much.
Yeah. Hmm.
So at the end of the day, if we're sitting down to have a drink together, I'll just pour myself a glass of non-alcoholic wine and he'll pour himself a glass of regular wine. And it doesn't matter what's in our glass, is what
Yeah.
I've come to conclude, where I thought it was going to be way more contentious of him feeling like I was judging him or I was missing out or anything like that. It hasn't been like that in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. My husband and I now have kind of on the same page as you, where we pretty much not interested in alcohol anymore, but we will have some sometimes. Um, and but I remember during COVID, my husband he's in healthcare and it was really stressful.
Yeah.
And we're bored too at COVID. So I
Yep.
started baking bread and he started getting really into like mixing mixed drinks
Yep.
and whiskey and the whiskey club. And he went from having the occasional drink to coming home every day and pouring this glass of whiskey that over time I was kind of having this banter in my head, like, okay, it's just one drink a day or occasionally two. But I was kind of uncomfortable with it because I didn't grow up with that in my household as a child. And what I noticed was he started snoring so much that we ended up buying him the strips and the strips weren't working.
Yep.
And he was snoring so loudly and it was driving me crazy. And I think his sleep was really disruptive. Fast forward now where we probably have 2 drinks a month or something.
Mhm.
His snoring completely stopped. There were all these other things that were happening with his health, and when he stopped and wasn't interested in that anymore,
Mhm.
um, I was so surprised how much his sleep changed and how his snoring that was becoming a major issue completely stopped, along with other things too. I mean, he started getting more interested in his health in general and eating better and then getting
Mhm.
back to the gym and things like that. And then I think that was when he started deep diving into spirituality too. We started letting go of all these crutches. But yeah, I was surprised about the snoring more than anything.
Yeah, no, it affects so many systems in your body. Your
Mhm.
sleep is dramatically impacted by alcohol. A lot of people think that they fall asleep faster if they've been
Yeah.
drinking, or you may have a drink thinking it's helping you go to sleep.
Mhm.
The whole architecture of your sleep is impacted by alcohol. So you will not get into the depth of REM sleep that you usually would without it. And you will also have more frequent wake ups. So you're not
Mhm.
getting as restful of a sleep. I'm sure that everyone can understand that after you've had a couple of glasses of wine or
Yeah.
beers, you just never have as restful of a sleep. And I didn't recognize how poorly I was sleeping until I started sleeping better. So I thought I was sleeping okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I thought I was sleeping great, but I didn't realize how much better I slept. I sleep like most nights, I sleep through the night.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I thought was interesting, one of the women that went through my program, she was giddy on one of our calls because she's like, I was dreaming last night. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I haven't had a dream
Oh,
in
wow.
years. She's like, I can't remember the last time I was dreaming. And in the first few weeks of stopping alcohol, she's like, I think that because my sleep is better, I'm getting deeper. I'm into the state where I'm actually dreaming. And
Yeah.
she was so excited. And that was a real eye opener for me about kind of how the depths of sleep is
Yeah.
affected. And I'm not surprised about the snoring because
Yeah.
it affects all of your digestive systems, your hormones, especially for women. Women are more impacted by alcohol. We get intoxicated faster, and
Mhm.
there's more health risks for women as well.
Yeah, I was reading that women, their increased risk of breast cancer escalates so much with alcohol.
It does. I actually have a
Yeah.
stat. Let me grab it. I just don't want to get it wrong. I'll read it out to you. This is a Canadian stat because I'm Canadian, so I'm just going to share this. In 2020, in Canada, alcohol use was linked to 7,000 new cases of cancer, including 24% of breast cancer cases.
Wow.
And the risk of breast cancer increases with each unit of alcohol consumed per day, with as few as 3 drinks a week, raising your risk by 15%.
Wow.
And every additional drink past that adds another 10%.
Wow.
I was shocked when I heard this. I inherently knew it wasn't good for you,
Yeah.
but I had no idea that there was all of this research connecting alcohol. It is a known carcinogen, meaning cancer causing, by the World
Yeah.
Health Organization. And I feel like that should be on billboards everywhere. And it's
Yeah.
not, because
Yeah.
there's a huge industry around alcohol, and it's been so ingrained in our culture. And there is a lot that a lot of people would lose if the truth about alcohol came out. And
Yeah.
more is coming to the surface. And the Canadian health guidelines changed dramatically recently. So there is more awareness being raised, but there's still a very long way to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think about, I'm not sure if it was like this in Canada, but I'm assuming it was, that during COVID, every single thing in the whole world shut down except for the grocery stores and
Yep.
the liquor stores.
Yep. There was.
And I thought that that was super telling. And then they started delivering alcohol to your home, which is like now common practice.
Yes.
But yeah, because people wouldn't be able to be okay if our liquor stores closed. And I think that there was a huge increase. There was in our household
There was.
with me and my husband,
Yeah.
a huge increase of alcohol usage during COVID, which makes me wonder if there's going to be spikes related to that with breast cancer, and when we're going to start seeing those spikes.
There was an absolute increase across the board in alcohol consumption and addiction and use of a lot of the resources. So there was definitely an increase. And I do think we're going to see an aftermath at some
Hmm.
point.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are studies too that even one drink will significantly disturb our sleep. Like, it doesn't have to be we're drinking every night or we have 2 or 3 drinks. Like, one drink is enough to disrupt our sleep
Yes.
cycle that evening.
It takes far less alcohol to have an impact on your sleep and overall health than I think
Hmm.
people realize. The other thing that I didn't know was that alcohol stays in your system for up to about 10 days.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
when you first consume alcohol, your body sees it as a toxin, first of
Hmm.
all. It is a toxin. And so it will do everything in its power to send all of the resources to get rid of that toxin because it's trying to save you from it. So that means if your digestion gets compromised, because all resources are going to get rid of this poison, and a lot of your brain's impacted by the alcohol, all these things get impacted,
Hmm.
and that effect actually stays with you while the alcohol is still slowly dissipating out of your body. So if somebody says, I only drink on weekends, or I only have a couple drinks a week,
Yeah.
that's actually impacting you for days after you've had it.
Yeah.
So people don't realize how unwell they're feeling or how much alcohol is impacting them, because they never give themselves a chance to take it out and
Yeah.
then see how you feel over a period of time.
Yeah.
I am not trying to convince anyone to quit drinking. I want to give people an experience where they're going through it in a supported way, to experience it and to be really conscious and aware of the process, and be monitoring kind of for yourself, what is changing? How is my mental
Yeah.
state changing? What symptoms are changing? Like, we track and we take pictures, and we do it in a very conscious way, so that at the end of the period, you can make an informed decision about what's right for you. You may decide,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm good. I'm good with drinking. Or you may decide,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to cut back, and that is right for me. Or you may decide, it's been easier to just completely quit and continue on that. But it's really about doing an experiment for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense because when we're drinking alcohol, we are killing like the healthy gut microbiome in our stomach, and that can lead to leaky gut syndrome and things like
Right.
that. And then that mental clarity and focus has been diminished. And it does make sense to take a hiatus for a specific amount of time for a lot of things to resolve in order for us to feel the full impact of what it would feel like to be completely alcohol free. And yeah, and then is it worth it for us?
Right. So alcohol is dose dependent. So the more you drink, the more health risks you have. So even if you decide to just reduce what you're drinking,
Hmm.
you're going to reduce some of your health risks. So it's
Yeah.
positive in any way. Obviously, the best choice is to not have any alcohol. But if
Right.
that is not something that you feel is sustainable, doable, you still want to have some type of um, presence of alcohol in your social situations, but do it
Yeah.
in a very mindful way, then that's right for you. What
Yeah.
is interesting is the last round of the program I went through, one of the women at the end decided that she was going to do moderation. She felt really good alcohol free, but she said, I
Hmm.
just don't know if this is sustainable, and I'm going to choose to have um, some alcohol. So then I worked with her and said, okay, what does that mean for you? Like, you
Hmm.
have to make a decision to create some parameters. So she decided she would have 2 drinks a week. That was what was going to be right for her.
Yeah.
And I was just doing a check-in with her, and she's like, so I'm going to go back to trying the alcohol free thing because 2 turned into 3, turned into 4 over the summer. And she said, I realize now that it was far easier for me to be alcohol free than for me to try to decide when I was having these 2 drinks. And so
Yeah.
she's gone back to being alcohol free, and she's going to try that for a while and see how it feels.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what tips do you have for people if they're wanting to work with that social element of going to parties and not drinking? Because I have to say, I think people do care a lot less.
Right. Right.
As long as I'm being social and I can still be fun without alcohol, nobody's gonna really care.
Right. So I think the 2 biggest tips I'd give would be your mindset and substitutes. So the first around mindset is going into that social situation with the mindset that you're still going to have fun.
Yeah.
Because the biggest challenge is going into a situation where you feel like you're missing out, where
Mm.
you're going to be different, where you're not getting to do the thing everyone else is doing, and going in from a place of being deprived, that
Yeah.
right away sets you up to have a bad time.
Yeah. Like
So,
you're missing out and
yeah, like you're
lacking
missing
and
out before you've even had the
yes.
experience.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's number one, is the mindset going in. And the second piece is having something that is a substitute that makes you still feel like you belong.
Yeah.
Other people might choose to have a non alcoholic beer or something else that still makes them feel like they're belonging in the social situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you and I talked about this before that now restaurants have all these non-alcoholic, really yummy, delicious, kind of fun drinks. It's
Yeah,
not something I could find at home or make at home easily.
there's a
Um,
lot of good options coming
yeah,
now.
yeah. I've also felt this pressure going into certain restaurants or bars or something that there's an expectation from the server to order so they're like a big cheap.
Right. Oh
And
no,
so
I completely I get that because
yeah,
I've had that experience. I've had people be like, "Oh, you don't want the wine list?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm good, but I would
yeah.
love it if you had a mocktail list."
Right, which your mocktails are almost the same price sometimes, so
Yeah,
it's like
in a lot of cases they are.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I understand that.
yeah, isn't that funny? Because it's like, who
Yeah,
cares?
but because it's like a social norm thing. I mean, if that
Yeah,
was a real concern, you could give a bigger tip if you were really feeling like you weren't like
right,
serving the server's needs, if that was
that's
the case.
true, then the server gets all the money instead of the
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, so it's easy to say that change your mindset going into an event. But for somebody that has social anxiety or extreme introversion, or they have used alcohol as a crutch to be fun and to let loose and let their hair down, it's easy to say to change your mindset, but how do we really do that?
So part of it is making a decision before the event, and part of it is allowing yourself to have the experience to create evidence for your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways that we shift our mindset is in shifting our beliefs. So if you only ever believe that you can only let loose if you have a glass of wine, you will never give yourself a chance to go in and have the experience, be uncomfortable, be a little awkward, but be like, oh, actually, I did it. And then the next time you go in, it's like repatterning your brain
Mm-hmm.
over time to be like, I can do this. And you're giving yourself more and more evidence in order to change the pathway of what becomes natural for you.
Yeah. Yeah. The more we do something, then we're creating those stronger neural pathways, and then it
Yes.
becomes easier and easier and easier.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe when everyone else is getting drunk, they'll see us as more fun.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you have any other advice, or are there any other myths out there? I think probably one of them would be the moderation myth, but are there any other myths out there that we want to debunk?
Um, I think that a lot of people, like I've said before, just think it's not possible. They can't even imagine what life would be like without alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that comes from our upbringing and the societal pressure. So I don't know that people recognize enough that how you viewed alcohol when you were growing up, what your parents and adults around you were doing, all of that goes into your subconscious mind. And all of the societal messages we receive through advertising and television shows and all of these things, it is so deeply ingrained. But once you become aware that it is something that you can change, it's a
Yeah.
choice that you can make. And you often will have a drink without even thinking about it because it's just what you've done, what you've always done. Not even do I want to drink,
Yeah.
I enjoy this right now. But it is just so ingrained in our subconscious mind and in our culture.
Yeah.
But it is something that if we choose, that we can change, and it can have a dramatic impact on the quality of your life,
Yeah.
on your overall wellness, on your overall health, and decrease your risk for so many different diseases. But
Yeah.
it is something we can control. And in midlife, especially if you're going through the perimenopause, menopause shift, there's a lot that is outside of your control.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that we can do for ourselves that can help many, many ways.
Yeah. I wonder how many people actually drink and they don't like it. Because I remember so vividly in college, and even in high school, drinking stuff that was disgusting that I absolutely hated. And there was this expectation and societal pressure, um, whether it was real or imagined, that I felt, where I was drinking all kinds of things that I didn't like. And it took me decades before I could discriminate what I actually really did like and enjoy and what I didn't, and get clarity on that. So it makes me wonder how many people are drinking when they don't want to, or they don't feel like it, or they don't like it, or, it's offered and they feel like they have to.
Yeah, there's a lot of social pressure for sure because it is
Yeah.
the norm. And when you first tried alcohol, if you'll remember, you probably hated it.
Yeah.
And that
100%.
is your body trying to stop you from drinking
Uh,
something that's toxic. And that's
poison.
supposed to happen. And then everyone says, well, don't worry, you'll get a taste for it. You'll get used to it. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so you keep soldiering on, and you do eventually acquire more of a taste for it and enjoy it. Like, I'm not saying that alcohol is not enjoyable. I enjoy
Yeah.
a glass of wine for sure, but your
Yes.
body's natural reaction is to try to stop you from drinking it
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
Yeah,
total sense. Yeah. So I would love for you to share how people can find you, what your offerings are about your program. And of course, I'll put all this in the show notes as well.
absolutely. So you can find me at Laura Valvasori on Instagram, and I have a program called Still Me But Alcohol Free. And it's a 6-week program for midlife women who want to try on going alcohol free. You can either do it as a self-guided program and just go through all the modules and all of the learnings. And I've compiled all kinds of research and tools and practices to support you. Or you can do it in a group experience where you still have access to the modules, but we also do a weekly check-in call for sharing and accountability, and we have a group chat going. And so you could start today if you want to do the self-guided, or the next group program I'm running is September 23rd, which means that we spend the first couple of weeks learning and getting prepared, and then we spend the 4 weeks of October being alcohol-free, and we align with Sober October. And at the end, you get to decide what is right for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. Just experiment, see if it fits, see if it's right. And then after that, you can make an informed decision.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Laura. It was really fun. And I think that this is becoming more common, this topic. Even though it's a little taboo, it's becoming more normalized slowly over time. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.